So I am here to introduce Mariel Triggs, and Mariel is the CEO of MuralNet, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that helps Indigenous peoples affirm their sovereignty and build their own networks, and has been doing it using the 2.5 gigahertz spectrum since 2017. As an engineer, educator, and researcher, she has pushed innovation in the classroom so that students from all backgrounds can excel in STEM fields, and her work in online math curriculums has proved how vital access to internet resources is for all people. She earned 2 degrees, one in engineering at UC Berkeley and a master's in Stanford in curriculum studies and teacher education. Please welcome Mariel Triggs. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariel Triggs, and thank you for having me. I can't believe this is happening, because when we started this work in 2017, nobody knew much about EBS spectrum, except the Nisqually, because they already had the network up and put up their WiMAX and had free broadband internet to all of their tribal members, plus selling it to local folks who also wanted access. But I should tell you a little bit about myself. You notice the engineering education overlap there. My mom came from the Philippines, Pilar Triggs. She's actually just returned. She's there right now for the first time in 50 years. And she came all that way because she knew that there were educational opportunities, specifically in the Bay Area. My father did the same. He was from Chile. And they came, and from when I was this tall, I had a responsibility to take advantage of those educational opportunities that existed there. They gave up their homelands to do that. And so I did, and I did what I was told, and I got engineering degrees from Cal, and I did end up at that other place, Stanford, but by the way, I never wore more blue than when I was taking my master's program because I like to instigate a little. And I wondered, because what I saw happening was, I felt like sometimes I was cherry picked. I wasn't that much smarter, I wasn't smarter than my friends who didn't have some of the same opportunities for whatever reason. And then that's when I realized that there are things within systems that will give folks the chance to get accelerated when it comes to your careers or opportunities, to be able to have that socioeconomic mobility. And that's when I started looking at what that makes that happen. And where I ended up centering is when it comes to STEM education, who gets to be picked as a student who's going to be successful as a math student? And so I was in the Silicon Valley, and I was doing my master's, and I started helping make these online tools that were almost these silver bullets. And what we were finding is, if I can take disenfranchised groups, middle schoolers, and I can have them watch a couple videos or play some games in August, and by the end of the school year, not only were they getting higher grades in the control group, but they were more engaged. They saw themselves as future engineers more likely than their counterparts. It was making a difference. I thought I was doing the right thing, right? But a group of my friends, including Martin Casado, he actually is from Flagstaff, Arizona. He did well in his startups. He invented something called software-defined networking, which is the basis of all these networks. And he reminded me that you're in the Silicon Valley. It's a certain privilege that I didn't necessarily realize with the demographics I was working with. And if you were on the other side of the rural digital divide, you weren't going to have access to these online tools, these apps. And I was actually increasing the opportunity gap between rural folks and folks that live within the cities. So we're Silicon Valley, right? We came up with a solution. What we thought the issue was tech. We analyzed the rural digital divide, and what we found was in order to make the network management system, in order to run your own network, it was cost prohibitive for most communities. So we worked with different big organizations such as Facebook. They were making open source a program called Magma. University of Washington also has their own called Colti. And we did something called dog fooding services. Basically, we helped design those programs by building networks with tribal communities. And what that did, it meant that these tools were going to be developed and designed and optimized for folks who are not necessarily from the Bay Area, who aren't necessarily having 2 or 3 IT degrees or whatnot. But tech savvy folks can run these networks. And remember, this is open source. You can now download this stuff for free on GitHub. So check, we thought we were getting that done. When it came to the infrastructure, what we're finding is carrier-grade equipment was available off the shelf. So what used to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, I don't know how many folks in here use Ericsson. I know I see a lot of telecom people. But no, you could actually buy stuff from, say, BuyCells, which is incredibly reliable, but then all of a sudden networks can go up for just a few $1,000s. Unlike other areas, the rural digital divide in the US isn't necessarily because of lack of access to infrastructure. Programs like E-Rate, they brought in fiber to almost every single school, or at least sufficient microwave backhaul. This is different than our sister organizations in Southeast Asia or in Africa, where they're dealing with situations where they have to build that middle mile, that, frankly, the internet backbone in general, in order to get folks access. In the US, especially on tribal lands, there's been people who have been working on this problem for 20 years. Janae Wilson and Nez Pierce, she's built an amazing fiber ring, or fiber system plus different microwave rings in order to connect her folks. Matt Rantanen, which I think everyone knows, he's done some amazing things down in Southern California. There have been people working on this problem for a very long time, and they've made sure the infrastructure is there. But what was missing was spectrum. And I don't know if you folks have ever seen that chart of all the spectrum that the FCC and NTIA have, but there's a small sliver called EBS, Educational Broadband Service Spectrum, that we found. We took the middle range of spectrum, what we thought was perfect for rural deployments because of physical properties. It can travel far, it can carry lots of information, it can go through trees. And we looked at the rules for every single one of them. And lo and behold, there's this EBS spectrum that was perfect. And the policies behind it were also great. You can have things scream, they can go at 40 watts, really loud, versus some of the other spectrums that be available, and licenses can only go 1 watt. But basically, it was amazing, and the licenses were frozen in the 90s. So we spent a year trying to figure out how to get access to that spectrum. In 2017, Dr. Chad Hamill, he's actually one of our board members. He's the VP of Native American Affairs at Northern Arizona University, our team's alma mater. He connected us with Councilwoman Ophelia Wanahamaji Corliss. That's back in May of 2017, and she checked us out and everything, and they talked it out. What we did together was figure out what did they want in their own network. So after we got vetted, we were all volunteer at this point at MuralNet. We scoped it out. I basically took a sick day. I jumped on a plane after work on a Tuesday, flew to Las Vegas, rented the fastest car I could, got in that Dodge Challenger, did the Route 66, went off-road, which I think I signed a contract with the rental agency that I wasn't going to do that, but got to the edge of the canyon on the mesa right above Supai Village. And in about 5 hours, we had that network up. One of the best afternoons I've ever had deploying a network. Well, until last month. With Internet Society and Bumpy Kanalehe, he's the head of the nation of Hawaii, and actually Dara Blackwater back there. We had to do a deployment in Hawaii. It was very difficult. And a 9-year-old and a 15-year-old, I believe, put up that base station in just maybe an hour, and then different groups went out to their homes and they put up their home units, and it was done. They were connected. But anyways, half a day, we got the equipment up. The equipment itself from BuyCells cost about $15,000. It was actually just $10,000 to us because our partners, Niles Radio Communication, they never gave us the bill for all the incidentals, cable, their labor, all that kind of thing. And we thought we had solved the rural digital divide problem. It took 4 months, when we thought it would take 2 weeks, to get a special temporary authorization, a permit to run their network. And then it took another 1.5 years in order to get the Habs-Pai's permanent license. But they had broadband in the center of town. And I'm actually going to skip this, but when it comes to the different types of spectrum out there, I do want to point out there's not one solution. EBS 2.5 will be a great way to get your network started, But you're going to want to make sure you connect all sorts of people. People that are close to the access point, you know, they can use the unlicensed stuff and get great throughputs, but you got to be careful because there could be interference. TV white space, you always have that uncle on the very, very edge that's kind of antisocial. You're going to want to connect them too. But you're going to want to get all these spectrums. 2.5 is the perfect starter for that. That one cell that cost $15,000, here's our theoretical maps. You can see that it's covering almost the whole village. It seems like it's missing this area here, but that's actually not true. The reason why it's not true is because their canyon walls love them. That signal on the mesa was actually doing a bank shot off the canyon walls and giving those folks the fastest speeds. We actually have about 95% coverage with one cell and $15,000. Now, what ended up happening is, you know, in 2018, this became more of a policy fight. I have found myself having to do more outreach when I thought what we were doing was just building networks. So my board told me in 2018 that I actually had to do cold calls. I called Godfrey. I called Gila River Telecommunications. I was calling all these folks, and I wasn't getting any return calls. I wasn't getting any. I felt like prom. And what was nice about it, though, I remember this very clearly. On June 6, 2018, Gila River returned my call. And I'm like, you've got to take advantage of this. Spectrum's amazing. Chairman Pai has basically proposed this tribal priority window that was going to change what it means to be connected on tribal land. And they said, but we already have fiber to all the homes, which you did. And what they've done, and you can see where we are now, is people are realizing that this is important. People are realizing that what we need to do is get people connected, and this is going to be a huge start to that. And what we now have, and what's really starting to gain momentum, it's this huge team effort. So what I want to do is I want to support you all in making sure that this can happen. The FCC has made it possible, and what our job at MuralNet now from 2019 and beyond is going to be to make it easy. You let us know what tools you need, and we'll make those tools exist. In fact, I see Rocky Tano here from Obsidian Websites. We got some feedback that our website was hard to navigate, so Rocky is stepping up to make sure that our website's pretty. I mean, no offense to the ULS.
No offense taken.
People have asked for different example networks. So we're putting up, we have 30-day permits to basically put up these proof of product or proof of concept networks. So to make sure that folks know what's going on and they can see what's possible. And I think that's important because this idea of exclusivity and everything, cost, build out, you need to do the math, right? You need to have an idea of what's going to happen there. So, for example, tribal colleges and universities, they can extend out their network using 2.5 to homes up to 6 miles away at these low costs. 1,000 if you're going to be within a 3/4 of a mile and you're only trying to cover a 90-degree sector, and 25,000 if you're trying to get a really big array on existing infrastructure all the way around. It can go through trees, but you can see what we're looking at the cost of these networks. They're very, very small. They don't actually need 20 megahertz. They can do this with 10 megahertz. Someone mentioned E-rate. Can you use E-rate to connect school buses yet? It's happening soon?
Sean, I don't.
I think it's still a pending proposal.
It's a pending proposal. I don't think that's.
It's outside of the building. So far, there's people behind these rules, and there's good people behind these rules.
I think the answer is that it is a pending proposal, but there's been no rule change yet.
No, it hasn't been acted on.
Hasn't been acted on yet.
Well, we're doing this on 3.5, and we have an NN license, and maybe one day. But we're trying to show what's possible when it comes to being able to put stuff on actual mobile systems. Now, this is interesting for
Mariel. That's an important distinction. Just because it may not be E-rate funded doesn't mean if you're using 3.5 or 2.5 doesn't mean you can't use it for your school. So I don't want people to think you can't do it. You can do it. It's just what hasn't been acted on is whether it would be E-rate eligible or eligible for funding.
That makes sense. So tribal colleges and universities, backhaul is usually internet 2 or something of that sort. They're not going to be limited in this. I want to point out though, 5 to 10 megahertz. These networks don't need that much. And also, emergency vehicles can be using it. IoT, soil sensors, whatever it is that you want. Again, very, very cheap. And I also want to point out arrays. If you're actually making service and you want to have 360 coverage around, you don't need different channels for each of these antennas. They just need to be alternating. So if you're trying to provide coverage, maybe you're trying to make a tribal ISP and you want real density, and this one sector can serve 40 people with broadband speeds, and this one does too, and this one does too, and this one does too. You don't need that much bandwidth. Do you mind going to the web map? So we're a small Silicon Valley organization. We're mostly volunteer. My team's amazing. Based off of the maps that we're looking at today, they made this new map. Go ahead and close out that window. So these are all the existing licenses in the tribal lands. And if you click on one of the tribal lands, go ahead and click on an orange area that also has, yeah, that'll work. So what we see here is you can see what's going on is we want contiguous blocks of spectrum. So in this situation, what you can see is those red parts is BRS. Right now they're commercial. You can't necessarily do anything with that. That K-band is in the middle of it though.
Hold on, let me make sure that our online guests can see this as well.
Now, when it comes to providing service, I like to say there's 5 cards. There's the backhaul that you need in order to run your system. Who's actually providing the service, the everyday stuff to make sure everyone's connected. You have existing infrastructure that you have to hang it on. You have the spectrum of which you have to broadcast on. And folks, you have the story. What I mean by that is people want to help. And if you're willing to collaborate and such, I'm in Silicon Valley, we don't have to fill out these giant government reports. I just have to make sure my reports are tweetable. That's what my funders want. So what you have here with that K-band, if you want contiguous spectrum with these 5 cards, you can trade. It's a win-win-win situation. So whoever owns that red area, Sprint, they might be willing to work with you to get access to those K-bands or maybe some of these other bands so that they can also increase their networks. And you can trade any of those 5 cards. Maybe you do want to run your own networks and you want to make sure you get some contiguous bandwidth somewhere else. That kind of sub-partitioning is something that that Sean Conway's firm has helped us with. Thank you. But maybe you want to talk directly to the license holders. So you can see on the bottom, you can see who has A1, A2, A3 channels. You can see how you can contact them. You can see all sorts of things. You can reach out to those folks and see, hey, is there some way we can negotiate access to this stuff? Literally, I got some feedback earlier today, and my team was able to change this since over lunch. There's a little pull-down menu in that hamburger. You can download stuff as a PDF or whatever it is that you want in order to get more information.
Over here?
Yeah. If you want slide decks, we have slide decks available. If you need handouts, we have handouts available. If you need someone to visit with you to talk to stakeholders within community or talk to tribal council, we have a huge volunteer network of folks who will do that. So you tell us what tools you need, and that's where we'll go. I want to show a new tool that we're also beta testing. Can you go to the other tab? You can see what spectrum you have. You can trade. Oh, you can actually scroll down on this one. Keep going until you see a map. The FCC map is excellent. It might look a lot like one of the maps we used to have. So what I try to do here is we made other maps that kind of show you how many networks you can run. Because if you're trying to avoid this exclusivity rule, you want to make sure that you know what's available and what it can do. We keep saying 117.5 megahertz of spectrum. That makes me excited. But if you're new to this world of spectrum, that means nothing, right? Red means there's no spectrum at all. Black means that the FCC is not going to give you a license because it's considered not rural land. Orange means that there's enough spectrum to probably build something, but it's going to be difficult. You're going to want to look at your maps and see if you can trade with the current license holders and leaseholders to get access to blocks. Light green, you can run one really robust network. And dark green, you can run several robust networks. You could have 40 megahertz to make your own tribal ISP. You can have another 10 to 20 megahertz in order to provide emergency services. You can have 20 megahertz so that the libraries can have their own network and lend out CPEs for the home, like the AIPI tribe, and folks can get access that way. There's a lot of spectrum out there. You'll still have enough to lease out.
So when your coloring shows what's contiguous or total?
What's contiguous, which is key, because you look at the other map after this, okay, right now I'm light green, but I want to be something different. Farmington has an interesting situation right here. Farmington, in that you have the B channels and the D channels owned by someone else, but guess what? Whoever's leasing that, they want contiguous spectrum. That means you have to go make a deal. That means you got to start looking at your options.
So just to clarify, our map doesn't show what's contiguous. In order to determine that, you'd need to go into ULS and see what's already assigned and see what's available to figure that out. We don't map contiguity within the channel groups.
But someone asked for it from us, so we built it. And that's what we do. Someone asked for us, we don't have a grant writer. We can't afford an engineer. How are we supposed to know how much these build out costs will be? Do you have that document? Yeah. So what we did, and here's an example, beta testing. This is something we're going to be able to do automatically for every single tribal land that has spectrum available. And if you go ahead and scroll down, it's basically an engineering report, a high-level engineering report. There's how much spectrum is available. This place has all spectrum available over their lands. Now, if I scroll down a little bit more to the next picture,
This one?
folks have seen the band plan. Oh, they're right there. That band plan so much. Now, while that whole pink area is the tribal lands that you're getting the license for, that dark pink area is where 80% of the population is. That's the area you have to cover. So much smaller. So what that means is you're not thinking, can you imagine being Navajo Nation and having tried to cover 80% of your land base? It's impossible. But what we can do is we can automate it so you can see where would I have to put networks in order to cover that 80%.
You're welcome. But that's the whole point, is that you don't have to cover 80% of your land mass. You just have to cover 80% of your population, which could be covering the village. Or do point-to-point.
The point-to-point is interesting, and we're working with manufacturers to make kits that are very much specific to meeting this build-out requirement. It's not going to be our default because the point is coverage. So what this is assuming is that you're going for 80% coverage. We're just going to jump to 5-year build-out standards, don't bother with the 2-year, and that you want to provide broadband speeds. So the specs that we have here.
Could you say that again? I love that. Because you could go straight to the 5-year. Could you say that again for everybody at home? Because you could be there so quickly. People keep worrying about 2 years, 5 years. You can meet the 5-year build out in the first few weeks. Can you say that again? I love that.
You can meet the 5-year build out in the first few weeks. Should I try with a southern accent? It's true though.
We've been on the road in the same places a lot, can you tell? We kind of go after each other. But no, you can. Try it with a southern accent, Mariel. I dare you.
I can do a Filipino accent.
Okay.
But anyway, like it's really not that hard, but you wouldn't know what you have to do, and you wouldn't be able to negotiate with your partners until you kind of get this kind of document. Now, we decided what 80% should be covered. Maybe you're in a situation where you need to make sure there's some key places that need coverage. Forgive me, we're from the Silicon Valley. We have an app for that you can download, and this will be coming in about February, where you can walk around and actually mark on your phone what are the key places that have to have coverage. The library, the school, the governor's house. All those places can be marked, and then we can redo the math to make sure that it's covered. If you scroll down some more, IT folks love this stuff, and you actually want to understand how you're building out this network if you want to build your own tribal network. We actually make it so that it can all exist completely on your own land. So you can run it on your own server. It's free. Right now, what's happening, the Habit Supply have been running their network for 2 years. I asked them, how many hours does it take? Oh, not that much. I'm like, come on, quantify it for me. And they're like, 2 to 4 hours? I'm like, and I was surprised. It's like 2 to 4 hours a week was a lot. No, that's per month. It doesn't, these networks are pretty solid. They run themselves. We offer the technical support. I get maybe a call every 2 months, and it's usually because there's a power outage. Guess how you fix it? Yeah, they turned it off and they turned it back on again. We now have a button on the network management system that does that, the reboot button. Scroll down. So people want to know what they have to do. Keep scrolling until you see a picture. This is the way the world is. Oh, a table. Here's an interesting thing. You put in what you want. What percent of the service penetration do you think? Basically what that means is what percentage of the community are you looking to serve? And you can change that number in order to figure out the rest of the stuff, how much it'll cost, the throughputs, all that kind of thing. It's doing the math based off of certain equipment that we've based as standard. Again, this is high level baseline, very customizable if you want. Scroll down. Again, more information about coverage and things of that sort. Here's an example of when you want to make sure the tribal government building's going to be. What this is actually telling you the coordinates of where you want to put up your equipment. They happen to have a tower right there. So that's the way we spec'd it out. They have a tower there. Now, what are they going to need? They're going to need 2 sectors, 2 sets of antennas. The height, about what kind of a antenna it's going to be, like all the technical information you need to build your network. Scroll down. Overhead pictures, because we all love them. You can keep going. Oh, this is what you folks want, right? How much is it going to cost? To connect this one pueblo to meet that 5-year standard and make sure that they can offer broadband would cost approximately $64,000 per license block. Now, this is actually not true. Our vendors make us show what's MSRP. Has anyone bought a car recently? Did you pay MSRP?
You would have been so proud of my negotiation skills, but no, we didn't know. You don't even start there.
It's way cheaper than this. When it comes to making these agreements, getting this spectrum, Sean's exactly right. You can kick the can down the road, but you don't have to operate from a place of fear or unknown. We can give you the tools if you want them in order to figure out what kind of you need. How much spectrum do I need? Who do I need to be talking to get this stuff contiguous? How much are the costs going to be? People are using these things in order to apply for grants. Someone's like, I need help with grants. I don't want to pay $30,000 for a grant writer. Thank you, People-Centered Internet. They're helping us develop an app. I know, we make apps such that we can automate the applications for the telemedicine and distance learning grants.
Hey, before you make fun of me, the car was not for me. I'm still driving the one with the bungee corded hood from Tennessee.
We have been following each other
Yeah,
around
I
a
had
lot.
to bungee cord our car together last time bungee cord. Those are good, right?
For a lot of grants, you need to have a business plan. Scroll down. Apparently, you need to keep scrolling. I mean, we'll make it. We'll give you the estimated timelines, padded, because, yeah, these things can go up in hours. It can go from, if you are internal, if this is part of your community, you can go from, let's talk about this and get that tribal resolution to a network in about 3 weeks. Our experience with the Habit Supply Tribe, it took us 10 months to get to that point.
I do want to point out that there was a lot of concern that our application process for the license would require this kind of, give me a business case, show me what you're going to do, and it does not. The accountability is on the back end when you show that you've met your build-out requirements. But you don't have to do this before the window's over. You don't have to do this on the front end. We just thought it would be easier that way, and ultimately you're going to show us that you're serving. So you don't have to submit a business plan, you don't have to submit your financials, you don't have to do any of that in the license application process.
So our job, thank you for making it possible. We're trying to make it easy, but we're also trying to make it right. Thank you, Sean. They're on the back end. If you work with us, they're making sure that all our legal is on point. We have a huge group of engineers who also make sure that if you want higher level plans or if you have any questions and such, that that advice is also on point. people ask for different things. Now what we're doing, by the time the windows opened, we will have tribal resolution templates. So you folks can like figure out how to do those things. You mentioned if you're doing a consortium, you might be making an MOU to say how we might work together. Something like that might be happening in Hawaii. So you know what, we can share general templates about how this goes. Models.
We don't have any strict requirement. We don't tell you what documents you have to file to show us your eligibility, your local presence. It really can depend on what it is you're putting together and what your tribe requires. Your tribe may require a resolution to authorize you to apply. It may not. So if in doubt, you can ask us. If you're working with MuralNet and Sean, you can ask them. But we'll work with you any way we can.
You can go back to the slides if you don't mind. Conflicting applications. The FCC can make the data available, but again, we'll make it easy. We will be monitoring it. You update it once a week, I believe on Tuesdays.
Does the batch run on Monday nights? I think it does. Yeah, I think that's right.
And what we do is we'll run the maps, we'll make maps about where current applications are, and we'll notify folks that we're working with if there's anything that's competing with them. Leasing and subleasing agreements, we already have those in place. We're going to make them public pretty soon. So if you want to make a template in order to get access to spectrum, this happened recently with the Pueblos where they negotiated with the University of New Mexico to get access to some unleased spectrum. And also the subpartitioning and stuff. Those are all things that we want to be available for everyone. And that's what we are. We're trying to make it easy. We're a nonprofit. We're free. And we're spackled at this point. When it comes to the 2.5 spectrum and making this build out, this ecosystem of folks like Gila River, like NTCA, like all sorts of folks are really coming together to make this happen. It's such an amazing opportunity. And maybe once in a lifetime. I'm hoping Jeff's right that this will happen more often. Or Dara, if you ever read her article on India and Country Today, she has an amazing op-ed talking about this.
It's important that this be successful for so many reasons.
We're the spackle. We're going to make sure that no tribal community falls through the cracks that have access to this. And we are here asking for help and coordination. So let us know what you want. If you think our color schemes are terrible, Rocky will fix it. And yeah, our contact page is up there. Next January, we'll have a whole suite of tools coming out. And by February, as this window opens, we'll be giving you that support week by week to make sure you have what you need.
All right, Mariel, thank you.
Yes.